Hi, this is Dr. Scott today, today and every day, I think I still am that. But today we have Roger on the screen. We had a little troubles getting going because StreamYard decided to change everything up, and both of us were like, "Wait, how do you get that thing to go?" So, how you doing, Roger?
I'm doing great, Scott. How you doing?
All right, man.
Good.
So, we're gonna talk and now. Everyone's on everyone's mind, I know, is the Charlie Kirk thing, and you're going to go, why are you talking about the Iryna thing? We are going to deal with this issue because the Iryna thing is going to lead directly into the judge issue, which is going to lead into the Charlie Kirk thing. So we're going to talk about all this issue, but I promise you this is going to have a direction in here, and Roger's going to have a lot to say about these kinds of issues that are going on in there too. So let's kind of move into this as the first kind of section. I have a whole bunch of little visuals that we're going to bring up here as we look at that. A few weeks ago now, gosh, it's been a while. It feels like it's been about a billion years with all the crazy things that are happening. A few weeks ago, this young kid, she jumps on a tram in Charlotte, and she's just getting off of work. And the fascinating thing is that she's a white girl. She's actually I don't know if she's a legal or illegal immigrant. That's the funniest, not in a haha way. The freaky part of this whole thing, with a black guy and two other black people in the background of on the right, on stage right, if you would say. She gets on a bus and she gets slashed. Um, and no one comes to help her. No one comes to, just if they would have put pressure on her throat, they might, I would say, save her. Um, and no one says anything about it. And it was actually weeks of this. And he had been convicted 14 times, and this judge just has a cashless bail. Can you talk a little bit about some of the particulars on this case?
Yes. From what I understand, she actually had some type of a legal visa that permitted her and her family to be in the country.
Okay.
And she was actually here working.
Like a
She
green
worked,
card kind of thing
yes,
ish.
yes.
Okay.
And she worked for a pizza place.
Right.
And she got out of work late and got on the light rail to head home, and was heading into the main area in Charlotte where people get off the rail and they can make transfers and things like that. So she got on the rail to do that. The individual behind of her, um, a couple of things to point out. When you get on public transportation in most of America's urban areas, you're going to be encountering all kinds of weird things.
Right.
And after a certain time of night, and this is not to point to anything racial, it's just the way life has developed in a lot of these communities. But in a lot of these communities, no white person would get on a light rail system or a bus or any kind of public transportation after a certain time of the day because of their safety concerns. And
Right.
so there was a question as to what might have happened there. But again, being that she was here on a visa, she didn't have a lot of money. She worked for a pizza place. She was on her way home. So it made sense to kind of expect to see her get on this particular light rail to make it home to a place where a family member could pick her up. So I think that's important. With regard to this individual that was charged, there was a video there that was actually most of these have videos in the cars, and so the public transportation system has videos of most of their cars in the larger urban areas because there tends to be a lot of activity that takes place there. So that's why I was not surprised to see this. The thing that I was surprised to see is that there were other passengers there who sat idly by while she was attacked. They didn't try to address the man or have any interaction with him. He ended up leaving his clothes and the weapon on the train as she is laying there dying, and nobody rendered her aid or assistance which again is it points to the complete lack of security and safety that exist in these urban public transportation areas. And just sort of as a sidebar, it's not like they don't have money because they get billions of dollars a year from the U.S. government in public transportation grants. And one of the key elements of their grants is to provide security on their trains, in their buildings, and so forth. They hire off-duty police officers. They have security with weapons and so forth. So they have people there who are able to protect the passengers. So that
Right.
was kind of the first thing that jumped out at me. The second thing was when they announced that this individual was arrested and went before the what everybody thought was a judge turned out to be a magistrate. And the interesting thing with magistrates, they have no law school. Most often, they have no kind of legal education other than what I would refer to as on-the-job training. Now, some of these people actually work as a clerk for the court, which means they may sit there and, watch the stenographer machine go forward. They may sit there and write the names of witnesses down as they come into a court, but they go through this period of time where they have some kind of exposure to the court as an employee. And a lot of states will have established the magistrate is a definition of a court employee that can then be hired to perform certain functions. A lot of these is along the line of doing an arraignment, taking care of identifying bail for someone, making a determination as to whether they can be released and so forth.
But let me
Sometimes,
jump in. Let me
sure.
jump in. Hey, listen, do I have a problem with a magistrate handling like nonviolent issues? Like for instance, I mean, if Scott's going before magistrates before, with relation to stop, I mean, uh, uh, car issues, like there's auto issues. I'm trying. I was
Mhm.
blanking out there, like auto issues, or speeding tickets, or any kind of things. Magistrate issues. I mean, that's pretty straightforward, right?
Yes, and in most cases, what you have is you have moving violations where somebody comes in, how do you plead guilty, not guilty, want a trial, so forth. You go through that process. But I think what is to the alarm of most Americans is the fact that a lot of these courts have delegated to magistrates the authority to make decisions with regard to bail, cashless bail in particular, for people who have engaged in what I would refer to as either borderline felony or felony cases. And
Yeah, but
so
see,
in this case, it was a
this is
felony.
these are violent criminals. We're not talking
Yes,
about like we're not talking about these these really non we're talking about a guy who's really ugly in the system, and he's been ugly for 14 different times.
yes, yeah, I understand. But what I'm saying is when I talk about borderline felony cases, I mean, these are things where somebody can pull out a knife and they can make a threat. And so you cross the border, you go over the line when you actually try to assault someone and stab them. So it starts out one way, ends up another way. And so as a result, you place in front of these magistrates the opportunity to make a decision. Do we put them in jail? Do we lock them up? Or do we let them go? And if we let them go, what's the bail going to be? And usually what happens in most of these cases that come before a magistrate, up until probably 20 years ago, there was always a bail. The problem we've run into is that over the course of the last couple of Democrat administrations in the White House, they have moved away from requiring bail. So what they do is they come up with cashless bail, which means you can report on your own recognizance to come back to court. We're not going to charge you anything. We're going to let you go. If it's a perpetual criminal, they do the same type of things. Now, not every area is going to have cashless bail. You have a lot of places where you do something like this, you're in jail. You get no bail because number one, you're a repeat offender. Most states have
Sure.
the three cases and you're out. And you're basically looking at long prison sentences. Nobody goes through 14 felonies and gets out
You see,
unless you're in an
and
urban
I
area that have these judges that believe that that's the right way to go.
I guess where I mean, like I mean, I guess from an outsider's perspective, a true outsider who doesn't spend my time in court systems. If we're talking about a homeless guy who's had consistent time frames in the court system with alcohol issues. He's alcohol abuse issues. He's abusing alcohol over and over again. Who's petty theft issues, right? I mean, if we're talking about, and he's never violent in any way, but he's stealing, things here and there, and you're kind of arresting him here and there, and he's always drinking, kind of thing. Okay, cashless bail. I guess I could see that kind of thing. And I guess I could see that kind of stuff. And I could see a magistrate who doesn't have a legal, degree in that kind of way. I guess I could see that. But none of this stuff makes any level of sense when you see the nature of this kind of thing.
No, and actually, I think there's a couple of other things here that have to be examined closely too. When you look at our court system, number one, you're always going to have somebody from the prosecutor's office at the court. They don't bring anybody in and put them before a magistrate or before a judge unless you have the prosecutor's office represented. No one's talked about that in this case. The second thing that you have is that if you have people that are repeat offenders and they're looking at progressive elevation of crimes every time they commit a crime, then the prosecuting office is going to say, we really need to think twice about letting this guy back or this man or woman back on the street because of their propensity to commit crime. And then sometimes they will put him in for a mental health evaluation. Doesn't always happen, but sometimes that will. If you look at a lot of the smaller communities around the country, smaller urban areas, rural areas, they will do exactly that. You're not getting back on the street, period. But the problem is and again, this is the decay of our system. We have a political party that believes cashless bail is the way to go. And that's the Democrats that are in power that are rendering these decisions. The second thing that was really troubling about this is that this woman actually sits on an NGO that treats people with mental health issues. And so she absolutely had no business letting this guy go because he's been before her several different times. The last time he was before her in January, she said, I'm going to let you out on your word that you will be back here in 3 months and that you will, in the meantime, go to my treatment facility and receive treatment for your problems. That's a problem for me.
Yeah. Like I promise. I'm, what my biggest thing with my ex-partner, my ex-business partner, as that he was an alcoholic. My biggest problem wasn't his alcoholism, was his lying.
That's right. And see, the challenge with these things is that in this country, we have allowed the justice system and all other systems that we expect accountability that government is involved in to become more and more lenient. And they protect the criminals. They protect the people that are enabling the criminals. They protect people that want to get promoted and get through the system. If you look at most of the people, and I know I'm making a stereotypic comment here, but if you look at most of the people that you see today in these positions of magistrate, sometimes even judge, they are not the brightest and the best.
Right.
They are people who are being promoted socially, being given opportunities to be in a certain place because you scratch my back, I scratch yours. And the problem we run into is that we have placed every American's life at risk because of this.
And so, the sick situation here, and the fascinating part here, and I know this isn't a perfect one here, and here's where Charlie Kirk starts to jump over in here. Almost a week or so before all this stuff, Charlie Kirk even states in here on the Teresa Stokes issue, right now, millions of people are finding out that you can become a magistrate in many states without being a lawyer, having never passed the bar, fully empowered to let repeat offenders roam the streets to murder innocents. And he states that point. This video doesn't even hit the open markets, let's put it that way. And then finally, you get Mayor Lyles, a freak who won't say a word about it. and then they basically say, we're going to put more people on the transit systems. We're going to put 5.8 million more dollars into the systems, and we're gonna make people more safe out there. Yeah, you know what? You didn't do anything already, and we're gonna expect that you've done something with that. And then what we see here
Or can I
is,
stop you there before you go much
yeah,
further
please,
here on this? Okay,
yeah,
so first of all, it's important for folks to realize the video was there. She sat on the video because she had an election coming up. If the video would have come out, she probably would have lost. Okay, so she had a
right,
political basis for doing so. The second issue that's there, when you look at the people that have not gone to law school, a lot of magistrates may have started law school, but they didn't have the skill set to continue. They might have got in on a DEI affirmative action issue. They didn't survive. The other part that you have is that you have, and again, I need to separate, there's really two types of magistrates in this country, three types actually. You've got attorneys who in some cases can be hired as a magistrate. You have police officers, former police officers that can be brought in after they retire from the force as a magistrate. And you have a lot of courts that rely on police officers, retired sheriffs, people like that. I mean, you have those in this country. But then you have the other pool, which is all the other folks out here that have not gone to law school, have not had any education in the law, and are sitting here basically making administrative decisions, which says you're in, you're out, bond, no bond, this kind of stuff. Or in this case, you have a woman who had a vested interest in a treatment program that billed the government for people that were in trouble with the law that went in for mental health counseling. Now, the
wow,
other part of this is that you have the federal government putting funds into Charlotte to run that system. And I will tell you, based on experience, because I know this for a fact, that the system admitted for many years that they had a security problem. They were looking for everybody under the sun to help give them more money to beef up their security. And they got in trouble for it a couple of times. You have vendors who come in and decide that they either want to provide bus service there or they want to provide a vendor type service, and they are told that they have to pay an outrageous surcharge to cover security. And yet they don't get the security. And again, that's a history of what's going on in a lot of these large urban areas. So I think the public needs to be aware of that point. The other point is that they can send this letter out and they can make all these blank promises they want to, but if you go back and look over time, they never follow through on them.
right.
What they will do is they will take the money that comes in, and you can rest assured that any additional federal funds that are coming in, everybody connected with this deal is going to get a pay increase, a large pay increase, because that's what they do. They have bloated salaries and they take care of benefits and they take care of themselves and they hire more people like themselves. And the problem is the safety falls further and further away from what it should be. So
Right.
anyway, I'm sorry, go back to your point.
No. It's just that's totally in line with that too. So then we see this criminal complaint, and I'm bouncing around the pictures because they're just powerful with that too. So the criminal complaint against this, we have a criminal complaint that comes out against DeCarlos, and you had a chance to kind of see this. This was done actually a little bit later. What did you see about the criminal complaint in here?
Well, one of the things that I noticed with interest is that they're suddenly rushing to put the complaint together and charge him for something only because of the fact they're getting the negative press that they want. If this video never would have come out, he would be back on the streets without a criminal complaint like this, or it would have been diminished substantially. In other words, they could have charged him with any inappropriate use of nail clippers rather
Right,
than stabbing someone. The other
right,
part of it is if you look at what he did, he pulled out a pocket knife, and if you watch the video, he opened it up. He clearly had the intent to do this, and when he walked off the train, he repeated
I
several
got her.
times that he got her. He got a specific racial demographic that he
Yep,
was looking to get. And so that makes it a race crime, that makes it a hate crime.
yep.
And yet they never want to charge for these because there's only one way that hate crimes go, and it's everybody else against the Black community. And that's not correct. Anyone who does anything like that based on race, it's a hate crime.
So what does this particular thing, when they did it from a U.S. District Court, what does this kind of thing, actually on a very fascinating date, we can kind of get into it. And what is this particular thing when it upgrades it to this U.S. District Court? What does that do differently?
Okay, so what takes place there is once it goes up to the district court, what it does is it changes the jurisdiction for trying this individual. In other words, it removes it from the local. Now, so for example, in this country, we have what's referred to as double jeopardy. If you're charged and found guilty at one level, you can't be charged and found guilty at another one. By the U.S. District Court coming in and taking this over, they now take jurisdiction on this case. And so their case is now the principal case because it involves a hate crime. And
Oh,
it
I got
involves death with a hate crime. But see, here's the other part. Where was this crime committed? It was committed on a public transportation conveyance, a plane, a train, a bus, anything like that. Okay. That carries the potential of the death penalty.
because also they put terrorist attack too.
And terrorist attack, yes. And because if you look at the other people, and this is where the other people, the video for the other people come into play. Now you'll notice, for example, today they dropped the terrorism charge against Luigi Mangione in New York because they said his killing of the United Healthcare executive was not done to terrorize and threaten other people. And no one else was terrorized or threatened by the killing. It was just a killing. That's what the judge's rationale was. In this situation, if you look at the other people on that car, that train car, those people are scared to death at what's going on, and they need to get out of there to save their life. So that's kind of the difference in how you weigh this. If you place other people's lives in jeopardy, or you place them in fear that their lives are in jeopardy, then you're going to be elevating that crime more to a terrorist type activity.
Got you.
And again, that's a mitigating factor, which means because of what he did, now he's looking at death penalty.
Because of that. And so once you popped it up to the US District Court, you put in the terrorist issue, you up it to the death penalty. Gotcha.
Yes, you up the judgment phase, if you will, to include
And therefore
the death penalty.
you take away Democrat, responses to all this kind of thing with that.
Yes, unless you get a federal district judge who's going to say, well, we're going to set aside this because they disagree with something. But see, then you go through the appellate process and everything else. So, but again, what's going to happen is this now, instead of using a local prosecutor, is going to use a U.S. prosecutor.
Right. But there's where Trump has been spending a lot of time since 2018, popping in around 200 different U.S. district judges, where I think we're going to see a lot of that change.
Yes, and you also have a situation where you now have prosecuting attorneys and U.S. district attorneys who were sitting here saying, look, this is the crime. We're going to go forward with it. I mean, after all, you had the Boston bomber. Again, that was a death penalty case. You have a number of these others that carry the death penalty case.
I don't think that we're going to see a lot of shirking that issue, especially with the district judges that Trump put in. I think that's going to get pushed forward in that way.
There's a greater likelihood that that's going to happen. And see, the other part of it is that even if locally they try to come out and charge this guy and say, well, we charged him first, so you can't charge him, the federal government's going to be able to take control and decide this case goes forward first.
Right. Okay. Well, we're going to...
And then kind of back up real quickly about the Charlie Kirk issue. One of the things that happened with this is Charlie Kirk made reference to the fact that a lot of people were thinking about this. Okay. It is no longer safe to get on these public conveyances. It's no longer safe to be around people because they will kill you at the instant, the drop of a hat, if you will. And the problem we face as a country is that killing people has been viewed as okay by the other side.
Right.
And I think that's the most important takeaway from Charlie Kirk's statement is that, and there's a lot of Americans that feel that way. The left has justified homicide as being okay. And it's not okay.
Okay. So let's step that one forward, because what I found, at the same basic time frame, we started to see this one in England, which I thought was one of the most fascinating little pieces of art. I'd never seen anything like this. And I'm like, wow, what was your response when you saw this kind of thing?
Well, my response to that was essentially this brings art to life. We are facing these kinds of situations over and over again. If you look in England and you look at how they have been treating their citizens, they basically have been mistreating their citizens like they were third-party citizens. But if you go back in history and take a look at it, that's the way they always did the immigrants that came to their country. Now it's flipped, and the immigrants get the rights to be there and do what they want to do while the citizens end up paying the price. And so
Right.
even if someone is speaking out freely in the First Amendment, they're going to receive the judgment of jail time because the judges there have made the decision they don't want to accept that.
When I first saw that, I thought it was AI. I mean, I first was like, I looked at it, I thought, that has got to be AI. And I went past it like 2 or 3 times and I'm like, that cannot be real. And then I realized it's people were responding to it. And I realized, I found out later it was real because then they tried to remove it. And then someone said, that's even better.
Yep.
Because I'm like, oh my God, that is just so much better than even this one. I mean, this is great, but you know what? This is better almost.
Well, and what I like about the other one is okay, so here's my first impression on that. If you look at this, okay, in England, the judges wear white wigs as part of their protocol in the court. And so to me, that's a judge beating down a protester. Not just the government, but it's the judicial system that beats a protester. Then you've got someone over here who is probably a barrister in the court walking by with a collection of books looking the other way, which means they certainly approve that. Which again, what that does, the combination of these two points to me the corruption in the legal system.
You can't even make that. I mean, like I can't. I mean, if I was a movie, if I was making a movie, I couldn't make a better movie scene from that.
No.
Like, I mean, like that almost makes me speechless with that. And then did you have anything you want to say on that one? I'm
Well,
sorry.
and on this one too, what it does, the first one, it resembles the fact that it's actually, to me, um, it's more like they're beating an Afrikaner,
Right.
or a person from Africa. This one, they're beating everybody.
Yeah.
There's no race distinction in here, and so this is even more indicative of the fact that you've got a corrupt legal system. Because whenever you have judges bringing the mallet down and destroying the public and getting away with it, that's a corrupt legal system, and that's really what we have here in this
Right.
country, in a lot of
Right.
places.
Okay, so as we started to look at this, and this was starting to spin out of control, we had a moron that decided to get
But
online.
it becomes an opportunity for
Speak up.
people to jump on bandwagons. And then for someone like Charlie Kirk, he should be ashamed of himself. No one mentioned the word race, white, black, or anything except him. What people mention is the horror of what happened to this young woman.
And I cut this down from what he said, but I'm going to play it one more time because it's just
People hurt people. What happened was horrible, but it becomes an opportunity for people to jump on bandwagons. And then for someone like Charlie Kirk, he should be ashamed of himself. No one mentioned the word race, white, black, or anything except him. What people mention is the horror of what happened to this young woman.
So Communist News Network decided to play their moronic statement from someone who needs to be ripped off the network and shoved in a corner because the guy is a complete moron and obviously just has to, speak, lies every time he speaks up, because not a day later, fascinating, on the exact same day that this particular court case comes out, Charlie Kirk is murdered.
Yes.
And I find it like, I mean, I'm kind of going, wait a second. It's too utterly, what are you talking about? How did you plan? And now I'm going to say, now I know a lot of people are trying to tell me that this is a fake false flag and, Charlie Kirk wasn't murdered. Well, first off, he was murdered. Absolutely. the question is was it planned long in advance with that kind of thing too? I don't know that one out there, but I'm going to say this. The sickness of the circumstance is, I don't believe in the Lee Harvey Oswald kind of thing, one person theory, but whatever was going on in there, it's pretty obvious that it was pretty dang bam bam kind of thing.
Well, okay, so from my perspective, I look at there's several things here that Van Jones is talking about. Number one, they always want to go after someone. Okay, so there's one. First of all, there's one thing he's doing. He is diminishing the value of Black lives. A Black person diminishing the value of Black lives, which is, to me, is really interesting. So that tells me he's a paid shill. He's going to say whatever he's got to do to get that paycheck. Okay, so that's issue number one. Issue number two, equating this and coming after Charlie Kirk the way he did, and doing this the day before Charlie was killed. To me, that's a dog whistle.
Yeah.
That's like saying, okay, guys, if you got something in the works, do it because we're all ready for it to happen. Okay. I think that's what's important about that is that a lot of these people that are putting out dog whistles like this to notify somebody to engage in some kind of behavior are doing so. Is it because their minders are telling to do that? I don't know. Is it because they believe that if they say it long enough and loud enough, people will do it? I don't know that either. But if I look at leading up to the attempted assassination on President Trump, there was all kinds of dog whistles coming out there from the Democrats and from the news media. They were telling people, this is okay. Go ahead and do it. And no, it's not okay. They diminish life. They diminish the value of people. They criticize people that are doing something that they clearly don't understand. And I don't give Van Jones marks for having any degree of intelligence at all. I mean,
No.
to me, the guy is just a mouthpiece sitting there reading off a teleprompter that somebody says, repeat this, repeat this, repeat this. And he does that because if you listen to the guy, he's got no depth at all. If you get him off camera, there's no depth period to the guy. So
and we've heard that over and over again with these people. I mean, they're complete idiots.
For sure.
Yeah. Right.
So I look at that and then I see the progression of what happens with this. And so the other people on the left that listen to this, it's like, okay, so my actions are now okay. Somebody else hears that and somebody else translator relates it to someone else that it's okay to go forward and do that. And so then you end up having a situation take place like the Charlie Kirk killing.
Right.
And so and again, there's issues that take place with that where I watched it, I saw it, I've had experience in dealing with some of these things, and I have thoughts. But again, my thoughts on some of the things I've seen and how I unpack some of these. Most prudent people are going to sit here and think about it and look for an understanding of where things go before they jump to conclusions and start saying things that are outlandish. At least that's what we expect in our society, because you never know when you say some of these things, it's going to prompt somebody else to react in a way that they shouldn't.
Right. Now, I want to kind of, jump over because we can get off on those kind of things. It's not really relevant in our particular conversation here,
Yes.
too. So, let's talk a little bit about this one here, because Trump really is opening up this because he said the exact same thing about Charlie Kirk's killer, too. So the animal that violently killed the young, beautiful woman from Ukraine came to America searching peace and safety, should be given a quick trial and awarded the death penalty. There can be no other option. He said the exact same thing, different ways, in essence. Death penalty. This is 2 times in a row that he's stated this kind of thing. And so that's 2 different states. Obviously, it's going to be elevated into, probably circuit courts, kind of levels. Some people are rankling at that one point that, that Utah's probably going to try to get out of it. North Carolina's going to get out of it. How would you, how do you feel about that issue? From a legal standpoint, how do they get out of that, or what do you see from a legal standpoint?
Well, I think there's a couple of things here that for me, really hits home. And that is that if I look at the states and I look at the roles that, in one case it's a mayor, the other case it's a governor, standing up there talking about different things that took place, conveying the message to the public. That's not their role. That's not their responsibility. That should have been the director of the state police. That should have been the local police chief that was doing that, because most law enforcement people, when they encounter these types of things, there is investigation, assessment, evaluation of the crime scene. They gather the information. They can make some general conversation about this, or identify some things generally. Yes, we had a person attacked and they didn't survive. We're looking at the scene to gather evidence, doing these types of things. I didn't see that with either one of these. I saw some people that were getting up there grandstanding, trying to say, look at me, look at what I've done. This is what I'm going to do. This is how we're going to handle it. And I think that from a legal perspective, to me, that's just wrong, because that you don't see that anyplace else. Years ago, I worked with law enforcement and the medical examiner's office in the area where I live. And so I've got a lot of background and experience of things that I've seen, and none of these, even from that perspective or my perspective as an attorney, none of these make any sense. These are the types of things you would see from a bunch of amateurs getting up trying to convince you that things are going to be okay, when in reality, they're going to screw it up.
Can you explain that a little bit more in detail? Because I'm not sure if I'm tracking with why you say that.
Okay. The reason I say this, okay, so and I can look at the North Carolina case, for example. In the North Carolina case, there should have been a police officer who come out and spoke to the media when this happened. I mean, not the police officer, but the chief of police or chief of detective, or somebody who came out with some knowledge to identify that this is a police investigation is going to ensue. We're looking for witnesses. We've gathered evidence. We've done the crime scene processing, all those types of things. I gather that never took place because no one's ever talked about it. The same thing is true in Utah. Okay, so in Utah, there's too many questions about what took place. There was a camera behind the stage that somebody took down before the FBI got there. Nobody touches the crime scene until the FBI shows up, because you're put on notice that this is a federal crime, potentially a federal crime. You leave everything intact. No, what do? They move forward. They're not collecting evidence. They're not doing some of the things they need to do. So what it does is it undermines confidence in the public that a proper investigation is going to take place. And much like they did with previous assassinations in the past or previous deaths, if they want to whitewash it and cover up things that may have taken place, that's a good start. Messing up the processing of the crime scene. I mean, any time you see someone in a community today that's shot and killed, you've got police tape, you've got evidence around. They identify bullet casings. They take pictures of blood. You've got people from the medical examiner's office doing their thing with the cameras and identifying, laying rulers down by them and taking pictures, gathering evidence for future processing. None of that happened in Utah. Everybody took off running, and if you go back and take a look at it, within a matter of hours, within 5 minutes, the camera was taken down. The camera had the video of the entire scene. Nobody knows where the camera went. They said it went to Turning Point USA, but that should be in the hands of the FBI. That hasn't been discussed. People have raised questions about the bullet. So if you understand the fact that if you look at the video of what took place here, so there's basically two options that took place. The bullet hit a bulletproof vest. If it's made of metal, it could have chipped off a piece of the metal and shot it into the neck, and then the bullet could have been lodged in the bulletproof vest. It didn't appear that that was the case. So if it didn't chip off a piece of metal because of the design of the bulletproof vest, it could have gone up and into the head. And if it's up in the head cavity, that's where the bullet still is, because no blood spray in the back, no evidence of blood coming out. And I know there's people out there that are trying to dismiss this and say this was movie theater optics and so forth. But strictly from a police crime scene investigation, there's too many questions and no answers. And no one has demonstrated the fact that they've been gathering the evidence. Here's another point. If somebody is injured like that, state law requires you have an ambulance on with a number of people that are there. Right. Why do you carry somebody to a vehicle and take them to the hospital? that's not a very good guarantee there's a survival ability there.
Right.
So if you look at all these different things that took place, to me, the impression I'm getting is that these folks, led by the governor, who by the way did not support Donald Trump, who was at odds with Charlie Kirk, who stands contrary to everything Charlie believes in, is the central spokesperson for the investigation. Some of this is not adding up.
Right.
And so, so when I look at these types of things, and you've got this right on top of Charlotte, the message to the American people is, don't worry about justice. We got it under control. It's going to be a freak show, and we hope you don't get caught in it, because if you do, there's no satisfaction for family that we're going to either find the killer, collect the evidence, or tell you what really happened. And that's where I have the bigger problem. It just shows that our legal system is a complete joke.
Right.
And it shows our criminal justice system is falling in disrepair, because that's becoming a complete joke too. And so for the men and women in law enforcement, they got to carry the burden of looking at this saying, boy, they really screwed up. And more questions keep coming out as there's a rush by everybody to get this resolved so they can move forward to the next issue. So that's where I have a problem with some of this. And again, I'm not going to get into some of the comments other people have made, because that's, I'm just not doing that. But the point of it is, strictly from a legal perspective, if you look at what lawyers and judges and police officers and evidence technicians and crime scene investigators and the FBI, all of these people look at, they're going, you have to be kidding me. This can't be real, because of the way everything has gone.
Right.
I mean, you've got people pulling guns, standing around looking like they're doing something. Well, I mean, I hate to be this way, but if this is if it's a show, that's what the public sees. They think that there's something there that's not adding up.
Right.
So I don't know what the purpose of this is. I do believe that that Charlie Kirk was taken out, but there's just too many fuzzy things around there that just
was there foul play around it? Of course there was.
Yes.
Of course there was. That's no question. That, I mean, I've had conversations on the other side of this, that it's messy, the legal side of it and the investigative side is messed up.
It is messed up. And one of the other things that came out today, which it was interesting to read about this, but there is this group called the Utah Diplomacy Group, and they originally had their founding being supporters of the Antifa, the trans, gay, LGBT community.
Oh, really?
And they were actually funded by the State Department. And they were given funds, and the purpose of this group sort of migrated to the point of where they're one of the official groups that these delegations meet with when they come from around the world, when they're espousing the LGBTQ and Antifa movements. And what's really interesting is that these people have been in close contact with the governor's office and the governor. And they're funded by the State Department. They're CIA connected. If you do research into the CIA, you know that they're supportive of this group. I mean, okay, so now you got that there. Plus, you have the fact this guy was, part of the trans Antifa group and LGBT and everything else. And so the question becomes: they're now on the dark web. They're having communications with people. Do they have a handler? Is the next question. How many people are involved in this? So what this does is it expands the grasp of this being a conspiracy. And then the question becomes, you go back to my comment from Van Jones about being a dog whistle to say it's okay to go forward. We don't know the role the media plays in this or anybody else. And so as Americans sitting here looking at this picture, they're going, what the heck happened?
Well, it leans me all the way through is who's all complicit on here, and do we just need to do like a clean sweep of these governmental agencies all the way through the media, EBS baby,
Yes,
kind of
I agree completely. And
go that way.
The other thing I'll mention too is that there are so many different issues that are popping out every day. When I first saw this, my first reaction was it was a global government that was behind it.
Yeah.
and one or two in particular. And now, based on the information that's coming out, now they're putting information out there that the Bill Ackman and some other people had meetings with Charlie in August, and they were putting pressure on him to meet with Benjamin Netanyahu and become more closely aligned to Israel, which was running counter to his belief as a born again Christian. He didn't want to do that. There's also been things floating up to the surface that it could be cartel connected. That was the other group I thought about. Maybe it's Venezuela coming after us because of the fact that we're hampering their drug relations. So there's so many other types of things out there that could rise to the surface and point to what actually took place. And I just don't see the investigations going in any of those directions, which makes me wonder if we're going to end up with a situation where this casts doubt on the ability of the FBI and government agencies to handle their responsibilities in cases like this. And maybe that's the setup. Maybe we have to go through setups like this so that we can demonstrate the fact that we have to get rid of agencies like the FBI, the CIA, and all the others because they're worthless. All they do is create more problems than good. And this is a demonstration to the public today that here's a prime example.
Amen.
I'm thinking about that because of the way everything looks.
And that's and I'm gonna I just gotta bring it up because I know you would agree with this one point, but I just have got to bring it up because I just had this conversation with someone. But listen, as I'm rounding into my 6th year as my near-death experience, but listen, and I've heard Charlie Kirk say some things, okay, and some people are believing that this is a fake false flag, and he's still alive and he's in witness protection, and I'm like, listen, I'm because he'd be taken out, he'd be protected, and I'm like, do you understand if there's 2 possibilities out there? He's in witness protection and he's protected for a time, or he's dead. He would choose death. Listen, if you sat in front of me, witness protection, and Scott would be off the air and have no contact with family and friends and the ministry things that I would be able to do, or death, I'd be like, choose death every single time. I'm not scared of death. I've actually heard Charlie Kirk say nearly that kind of wording because I'm not scared of death. I personally am not scared of death. To live as Christ, to die as gain. That's what the word says. And I know Charlie would feel that kind of way. So to think that, and most people most people in the world are terrified of death. But people like Charlie and people like me, I'm not scared of death. Absolutely 100% I'm not scared of it. And neither was Charlie.
And I agree with that. And I had a near-death experience in a traffic accident years ago. And so I've always approached the concept of death differently. For me, I look at death as walking from one room to the next. I look at it, when my time comes, it's time to go. I've had family members who have died that I have been very close to. I mean, I have a good understanding of if being faced with a choice, I know the choice I would take, and I would take death too.
Yep.
And I will say this,
go ahead.
For most people that are in a situation like this where they've experienced near-death experiences, they know what they would say, and that's where they're having a hard time with this so-called fake or false situation here. Now, I will say this along with that. I know that, okay, I looked at the casket scene and I have seen prosthetic limbs before. And I know that you can make a video to do anything that you want to. Okay. So
Sure.
I understand that. However, the other part of it is that I also have seen people who have died from the kind of wound that he had. And that was not a fake wound and a fake death. And I know there's other people out there that would vehemently disagree with me on that, but I have seen it firsthand. I have been close to it to where one of my responsibilities was to trace the direction of the bullet that went forward. And so I know what that's like. I have seen it firsthand. And Charlie did not fake his death. He is not in witness protection program. He
True.
died. And so, and there is nothing that's ever going to cause me to think differently about that.
Right.
However, and I say, however, other people out here are trying to paint this picture. And so, from my perspective, when I'm given the opportunity to have the conversations, I go with the death, and I can explain that, and I can explain it from my perspective and why everything I've seen makes perfect sense. And I let
Yeah.
them
And
talk from their perspective. And I mean, I can say, yeah, there's a little bit of this here and a little bit that there, but stop and think about the ludicrousness of your comment. They are not going to line people up and say your number brings death, and we're gonna do a fake shooting. You're gonna forget your wife, forget your kids, forget your family, forget everything you've been up to, and you're gonna go
and
off here
that's
and live someplace
and
else.
that's
And
the
it's
big
like
problem.
that doesn't happen.
But that's the big problem. But you and I, Roger, have actually had to do experiments. I mean, you and I have actually had to do scientific experiments in college,
Yep.
and we've actually had to set up an experiment. Now, let me just say, if you've had to do experiments, you actually have to set an experiment up, and there
Yes.
are such a thing as called a null experiment, which means that you have to it comes back to a null. And one of the things that comes out in those kinds of experiments is you have to actually have you have to set up all of those things, and there are issues that come out in there. And if there are too many random events that are around you, it will mess up the experiment. So
Yes.
so for instance, and if you do believe in, the moon landings, or you don't believe in the moon landings, one of the most simple things to do is to fake the moon landing. I've said this to many people before. The simplest things. Doesn't mean it's not expensive. It's very hard overall, but it is simple because you have one set of cameras and you have one set of groups that would be able to do that. The problem that happens with this is there are thousands of people, thousands of cameras, thousands of vantage points, and people that are 6 feet away. So you have so many problems with that particular issue. And there is one possibility of anyone who will mess up the experiment. And so if you're trying to accomplish what's called a fake false flag, that my friend Patriot Underground had said, that he said, well, I think you created that phrase. I don't know if that's true, but whatever. Any little thing could mess up that experiment to create it a null.
Yes.
And so it is too unlikely. And there's a phrase that comes in here: is it more than likely than not?
Yes.
And Roger and I have actually had to write probably tens of thousands of reports. Is it more than likely than not? How many times have you written that?
Oh, I've multiple times,
God, like,
more than I can remember.
all of us have written that because in medical writing and in legal writing, you have to write it that way:
Yes.
more than likely than not. And when we look at these kinds of things, we say more than likely than not. And so that's when you say, does a fake false flag more than likely than not? And so I want to pause on that one because that's a really fun one. But I want to get your take, because as we kind of because Roger, we're gonna bring up some other things here. I want to bring this one out at you because I didn't even prepare you for this one, but I think you'll have so much fun on this one.
Sure.
I want to shift gears a little bit. So as people were reacting over the last, I don't know, 10 years, we've seen people have a hissy fit that they would find old videos of conservatives who might have said something, including President Trump, who might have said something 10 years ago, 30 years ago, something he might have said, and then go ahead and sue him. right? And then these people, one day later, after Charlie Kirk has passed away in an abhorrent circumstance, they go on social media and make abhorrent claims, right?
Yes.
And this lawyer makes an amazing statement. It's a 4-minute video, so I want you just to listen to it. And then from your legal standpoint, I'd love you to respond to his little point. So
Sure.
it's such a powerful little statement here with it too. So here we go.
Now, calls that were received from individuals who are specifically saying, I want to make sure I get this right, I have been terminated, I have been put on suspension by my job for things that I have said on my private social media account. First of all, I want you to think about those things. Private, social media, they do not go hand in hand together. But a lot of comments that we're getting specifically about the unfortunate death of Charlie Kirk. Why do I say unfortunate? Because I don't care who you are as a human being, you should not root for another human being's life to be taken, whether you agree with their political views. I'm old enough to remember the whole phrase, sticks and stones may break my bones, but names will never hurt me. I think we have forgotten that as a society. And if we get to the point where we're simply to the point that if somebody says something that we think they deserve to die, there's a bit of me that actually believes that Mr. Kirk, whether I agree or disagree with his views, the fact that he was willing to engage in a logical debate, and by the way, that is what we do as attorneys, that if we have differing views with our opposing sides, it's basically an intellectual debate. You should not lose your life for engaging into intellectual debate with anybody. And there's a bit of me that believes that I don't know if he actually believes half of the shit that he was actually saying, because, you know, some of it is just rage baiting to get encouragement. By that same definition, are we going to start saying that we have a problem with Leonardo DiCaprio for playing a racist in a movie even though he was acting? Anyway, what is ending up happening are people are forgetting about the First Amendment of the United States Constitution. They are saying, hey, Mr. Kent, I have freedom of speech. I should be allowed to say anything I want at work on my private social media account. Again, no such thing. Stop saying this is private. One, it's not private because you're posting it. Social, by definition, is social in media. Come on. But what I encourage people when I tell them is your employer, especially in South Carolina is a right to work state. What does that mean? That means your employer can say, you know what, get the fuck out of here. We're not going to listen to this discourse. You cannot post this stuff on the page. Some individuals have come to us and basically, let's say they're a teacher. They're a teacher and they are saying that, you know what, my school district has suspended me because I said, Charlie Kirk, he deserves to die. You teaching our kids? Or you work for an elected official and you want to put political things on your post and your elected official says, nah, bruh, you don't work here. South Carolina is a right to work state. Number two, when we talk about freedom of speech, you have the right to say whatever the hell you want, but people tend to forget you can say what you want. Our government is not going to arrest you for saying what you want. We're not going to kill you for saying what you want. However, your employer has the right to terminate you. They are two different things. People get confused on freedom of speech and freedom of consequences. There are consequences to our actions. So when we get those calls and people ask us, can I file a lawsuit because my employer terminated me because of the stuff that I put on my private social media account? At least in South Carolina, my response is they can terminate you for anything they want to. As a matter of fact, a lot of times when employers contact me and say, how should I terminate an employee? I said, don't give them a damn reason. You work at sometimes as the sheriff say, you work at the will and the discretion of the sheriff. Don't give them a damn reason. There's a famous quote from a pretty, I don't know how to say it, a pretty prolific philosopher, old Dave Chappelle. You know, everybody wants to give an opinion, and he had something that was pretty great to say. He says, you could shut the fuck up.
Okay, so you get the idea.
I get the idea, yes.
So anyway, I mean, obviously, sorry, he did cuss a lot in there, but you get the idea. I thought this was a pretty powerful thing. As an employer myself, I was sitting there thinking, private social media stuff, you know, I just would love your opinion about that kind of thing as well with that too. Sorry, Roger, did I catch you there?
I'm still here, I think.
Yeah, sorry.
Yep. Okay.
What was your opinion there?
Okay. First of all, there's no such thing as a private public comment.
Right.
And if you use the internet, everything is on the internet. It's forever. It's out there. So you can't have any privacy there. You may have like a Facebook group or something where it's private, limited to a certain few people. But even then, if you share it with someone who's in the group who takes issue with it, guess what? It's no longer private. So what people need to do, I think they forget the cardinal rule. Number one, words, you can say what you want to say until it places somebody else's life in jeopardy or it creates the incentive by somebody else to take action. Then it's no longer permitted. The next thing is that people forget to, when they have discourse, they forget that lesson when they were taught as a child.
Right.
You know, your good parents would always say, now remember, before you respond, count to 10. And you're either going to forget it or you're going to think better of saying what you were going to say, or in some cases, you're going to say it better, more politer and nicer. And I think that's what we have to do. We are so quick to jump the gun and say what's on our mind without giving our mind and our mouth time to catch up.
Right.
And I think that's where a lot of people run into difficulty. You can disagree with what people say, but nobody should ever wish harm or death on somebody else. Number one, it goes against all elements of humanity that you can think about. But number two, it's not morally correct. And if people have a sense of morals, and a lot of these folks will say, oh yeah, I'm a good moral person, well, they just proved that they weren't. And so they have to be careful not to interject their personal feelings into those of their employer. In the case of, school districts or businesses or an elected official or anybody else, they have to follow the direction that the employer has provided for them, and they have to limit their comments to things like, well, my comment doesn't matter, or my opinion doesn't matter, my employer wants this, or my employer wants that. That's the more prudent way to go. A lot of people just said whatever they wanted to say and they regretted it. And even in some states where they don't have right to work, there's still consequences for that poor behavior.
I don't know of any. I almost don't know of any right to work state. I mean, there might be one or two, but I mean, I guess my point here too is, frankly, listen, if there are people that have passed away over the years that we all know, and they pass away or murdered, and like we've all seen someone who was a jerk and he passed away. And normally what you do is that's what you would just do. If you didn't have anything good to say about the person, you go like,
I think it was Mark Twain, and I apologize if I get the attribution wrong in this, but he made a comment. He says, he said, I never said anything evil about anybody else, but I often got great delight in reading their obituaries. And that's that's a private comment or a private thought that you might have. But again, at the end of the day, we treat others as we want to be treated. We have a golden rule, and a lot of people don't follow that. And I think one of the other, kind of jumping back to what we were talking about earlier, one of the things, my personal opinion, and I apologize to those folks out there who run contrary to me on this, I think the advent of video games and instantaneous ideas about things has wrecked our country. And I know other people have beliefs about how they think certain things happen, but I can tell you, if you experience something in real life, it's going to change your mind. If you've ever been shot, you know that it's a whole lot different than getting a paintball shot at you. A bullet hurts, slugs hurt, BBs, things like that, depending on what it is. I mean, there's different levels of pain. Same thing is true if you're inflicted with a cut from any other weapon. And people need to think about what the impact of these actions are on the human body. And that's why I believe when I hear some of these people trying to dispel this as being a false flag, fake issue,
right,
they're what they're talking about. They have no basis on which to make the comment. And if I take their line of thinking and I line it up with life and reality, they're going to find out it's not the same.
Right.
Theirs is more fantasy than reality. And that's why I think people have to be really careful, because if you get large groups of people following you, suggesting that this is something other than what it is, I think you're setting a lot of people up for for messing with their minds and creating a lot of hurt.
Exactly. And I guess, like I personally have been, I remember at least one funeral that I've been to that of a person I really didn't like. Um, you know what I did? I went into that funeral, and when people would say, what'd you think about the person? I didn't answer. I would say, hey, what'd you think about him? I
Yes.
just turned the question right around. I'm like, oh, oh, hmm. I didn't answer. Like, what's the point at that time frame?
Yes.
And I just let the other person who had their strong feelings say their own thing. And like, what is the point? And here's the fascinating point. Now, I want you to think, as an employer, who are these people that are making these comments? Now, I want you to think. I'm not talking about a machinist who is doing a very physical job that I'm as as an employer, I'm asking a whole bunch of really I've worked in some very rough jobs, okay? And you might not think I have, but I have worked in some rough jobs. I've worked in kitchens and other kinds of things too. So that's a very different circumstances. But guess where we're talking about? We're talking about teachers who have had kindergartners who they're showing videos and they're cussing at the little kids. How good is that circumstance for that? We're talking about physicians, anesthesiologists who are putting someone underneath the knife, in essence. We're talking about university professors who have direct influence over the youth of our future. You're like, wait a second, these are government employed people. They have the authority of the future, and they have no right to make these kinds of disgusting kind of claims with that. And the employers absolutely have the not just the moral authority, but have the absolute point to go ahead and fire those people, because like Clemson University, it took them several days before they actually did fire him, but they actually made the final good choice to finally fire 3 of those people, but they needed to do that.
Yes, and I guess a couple things I'd like to add with regard to that. Okay, so number one, as an employer, you also have a legal authority, and that's important because you're operating under color of legal authority. You have the absolute legal authority to make a decision to hire and fire your employees based upon whether or not those employees carry forward the duties and responsibilities of their requirement as your employee. That's issue number one. Issue number two, when you are representing organizations like colleges, universities, medical facilities, the government, and others, again, you are acting under the color of authority that particular job has brought to you because you work for that entity. So you are held to a higher standard, if you will. It's like the discussion we had earlier about people who are magistrates versus people who are not. If you are a lawyer, you're held to a higher standard. Now, you can say we're going to apply these standards to people that don't know anything, but they're going to say, well, I don't know. I mean, in a prime example, this Lisa Cook here, during an interview said, well, what if I didn't intend to lie on my mortgage documents? Well, I mean, stop and think about how stupid that is. What does it tell you at the bottom? You're completing the documents and signing it under penalty of perjury. If you don't know what perjury is, look it up. So you can't say you didn't intend, you didn't know you were doing it, or come up with some lame excuse why it doesn't apply. And that's the problem that we have in this country. We have given too many people a free pass, an excuse for their behavior, and now we're reaching a point of accountability. We're reaching a point of where now you have to pay the price for the bad choices and the bad behavior. And they may not like the choices because they may result in the fact that they never get employed again or for at least a very long period of time. And remember, the internet is forever. So anything you put out there is forever, whether it's videos, whether it's written information, social media, whatever it is, it's there forever. And that's why people have to think before they do. And a lot of them don't. And I say this one last thing about decisions that are made to terminate these people. I've seen some conversations going back and forth where some have said, well, we want to set a database up to identify these people so that the employers can find out about them. And then I had somebody else say, well, remember, they tried to do that to the Tea Party folks, and it created a lot of havoc. And so we've had that once before. And so then others are saying, well, that's actually payback. Well, the problem is you never end payback because it's always one-upping somebody else. The better behavior is for people to think about what they're going to say and never deliver it if it's going to be harmful or hurtful to somebody else, or it's going to cost them their job. And I think that's where society is going to have a very powerful lesson to learn from this, because if they see consequences of behavior, maybe they think twice the next time before they do it.
Right. You know, I mean, and this funniest thing is that, you know, God, for a long time, I could have, hid my name in here. I put my full name. I'm easy to find. I'm super easy to find. But God, from the beginning, made me put my full name out there. And I could have figured it out. I did. I asked the Lord what I was supposed to do, but you know what? I had to do it. And I did it on purpose because I was told to do it. And, I have been, mistreated over and over again. And Roger knows that. We've talked about it, but the thing is, now we're seeing people, especially on the left, losing their job. And they're going, wait a second. Why is it hitting me now? Well, guess what? The consequences are starting to hit them in the face. And you're going to start realizing you've got to pay the consequences, pay the piper in essence. So,
well, and actually, can I take a minute and talk about another element on that? Because one of the things that people are not realizing is that if you worked for an employer and you went through a process and you've noticed the employer engaging in bad behavior,
oh, sure.
now you're coming out and we have all these whistleblowers coming forward saying, well, these are the things the employer did. And we're finding out that a lot of these employers out there, especially the federal government, have been engaging in such poor activities that today they just released the information on the fact that the Democrats and the FBI were working with the Justice Department to go after 92 individuals and groups of people. And they were putting out false information on them. They were shutting down their bank accounts. They were doing everything they could to bring harm to them. A lot of the folks who denied the 2020 election had a huge price to pay for this.
Right.
So now the question becomes, how many other whistleblowers are going to come forward from businesses that they're aware of that have done this? And what's the impact on that going to be? So we're seeing a big paradigm shift in this country where people have to really give some thought to their actions and behavior. They have to give some thought to what they say to others, and they have to make certain that at all times they're going to be on guard to do the right thing.
Yeah,
that's challenging for some people.
It's called transparency.
Yes.
And we're going to start seeing that really dramatically with that too. So guys, I appreciate you listening all the way through. Hey, would you guys do me a favor? Just like and subscribe. It really helps me out. You can go on to drscottyoung.com, and we have a lot of good information on there too. So you can download some cool stuff out there too. So I appreciate that so much. Thanks so much, Roger.
You're welcome, Scott. We'll see you again. Take care.
All right.